Welcome to Uncloaked Illusions. I'm Chris Anthony. Here's a history of what happens after governments have disarmed their citizens. 1911, Turkey disarmed its citizens in between 1915 and 1917. They murdered 1.5 million Armenians. 1929, Russia disarmed its citizens in between 1929 and 1953. They murdered 20 million Russians. 1935, China disarmed its citizens, and between 1948 and 1952, they murdered 20 million Chinese. 1938, Germany disarmed its citizens, and between 1939 and 1945, they murdered 16 million Jews. 1956, Cambodia disarmed its citizens, and between 1975 and 1977, they murdered 1.1 million educated people. 1964, Guatemala disarmed its citizens, and between 1964 and 1981, they murdered 100,000 Mayan Indians. 1970, Uganda disarmed its citizens, and between 1971 and 1979, they murdered 300,000 Christians. Now, you can argue about the numbers, but the point here is that disarmed citizens are vulnerable and that there are many historical examples of disarmed citizens being killed and oppressed by their own government. Now, with that being said, moving on to the conference that Dana Loesch spoke at the CPAC, and give me your opinions about this. By the way, this speech was riveting. This speech was very passionate, but this speech was elegant and it was executed perfectly. This is a conversation that's open for debate because some people oppose strongly the right to bear arms, and then there's others who hold to it, adhere to it almost, because, mind you, this is a history lesson. What happens when you disarm the people? What follows next? You disarm the Second Amendment, I promise you, this is an assurance that the rest of the rights will go down the toilet right along with it. You can't control an armed society. You can't control armed citizens. It would be more of an upheaval to try and oppress people that can be armed and can protect themselves. So that's a great deal of what's going on. And mind you, touching a couple of points with this. Again, the Second Amendment. Also, the CNN town meeting held a few days ago, as I've mentioned earlier. Now, they were trying to dispute whether educators should be allowed to carry guns on school grounds. I will say that I can agree with that. However, you also have to look at the teachers because, again, you've been funneling and pushing through a great deal of people that have mental illnesses, and people are not getting in the fields of education because they just have a passion to teach the young people. They want to be the stewardess of these particular minds that they're going to mold and send out into the world. They're not interested in this anymore. It's really about a check, which, teachers pretty much probably make the lowest of most of the governmental jobs for the most part. And yes, it has become a governmental job. The right to protect yourself and family, when that's removed, it is fair game for the government. And, that's why they've been pushing for the infringements on the Second Amendment. Let's look at the situation with the school. There were no metal detectives, which schools should have metal detectives. Mind you, it does kind of remind me of this movie called Class of 1999, where, school was literally the war zone. And that's what it seems like the schools have literally turned into at this point. They're war zones. And they're festering places where all of this negativity, all of this hostility can manifest, and it can metastasize. And that's what you see a great deal of. I mean, again, as I've mentioned before in a video, as kids, we tend to be very cruel and unapologetic about the cruelness. And you never know exactly what that can push another person to. There was no reporting of mental health issues with this particular student. And mind you, there's a lot of revelations that's coming forth that implies, that suggests that maybe this was a false flag, and this was all taken into account by trained operatives. And I'll leave that up to you to decide whether or not you want to look into that a little further. Again, multiple signs of the person carrying out this particular tragedy, because he was posting it online. And I would say that maybe, just maybe, the intelligence agencies, if they're the ones that carried it out, mercenaries, whomever it might be, could have targeted this person because of this reason. You never know what their agenda is. This really does seem like this is the beginning stages of a civil war. And that has everything to do with two sides of the country having completely opposite perspectives, and they just cannot have rational and logical debates about it anymore. The left is fucking insane by the way. You know, Democrats, liberals, they're all insane, irrational, illogical, and they're just like trying to shove the political correctness down everyone's throat. Moving on from that, so I've made a couple of notes. What is your opinion, for the most part, about what you've seen occurring with these particular school shootings, these seemingly staged events? You know, and I was not in Florida to actually be a witness to account for any of this, but a great deal of questions are not being asked. I mean, if you've seen the CNN town hall meeting when Dana Loesch spoke, it was like they were tearing her down every chance they received, and there was no opportunity to actually have a debate, to have a conversation. I mean, they were even chanting burn her, you know, as if this is the Salem witch trial where it's mass hysteria. So a great deal of that particular CNN meeting was actually something that was set up by CNN to make the NRA and the spokeswoman of the NRA look heinous, to look horrible, to look uncaring, and to seem as if it's their fault for this particular situation, when it has everything to do with your states and its rights and its regulations on being able to report people with mental illnesses. Again, we have a great deal of Americans walking around bipolar, multiple sclerosis, multiple personalities, anxiety, depressed, and a great deal of them are depressed, and they are trying to mask the depression with narcotics, with marijuana. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with marijuana, but it's always when it's done in moderation, and you don't have people doing anything in moderation anymore because they just need to escape the reality of the situation. And again, this is the senators, this is the representatives of your states that you should be addressing, and not people that have absolutely nothing to do with events being carried out like this. So give me your opinion about this. Give me your views about the Second Amendment. Do you feel, or do you agree that the moment that particular right is removed from our rights, that every right after that will just trickle down and they'll be removed as well. We'll literally be living in a totalitarian system, communism, and that's what they're pretty much pushing for. This is your America. This is your America. This is your politicians that only cater to that only really cater to the private corporations and corporate interests. They don't care about the people, and that is the ones that really should be removed. Give me your feedback on it. Like, subscribe. Please share the video. Oh, by the way, thank you for the comments that I've been getting on the Tariq Nasheed and Jared Taylor's debate analysis. The negative comments and the positive comments. Thank you. I ask that you engage with me regularly. Hit that notification button so you can get the videos, because I have a great deal of things that is that's transpiring, that's happening. And give me your opinion about this. How important is the Second Amendment to you? How important is, in truth, any of the rights? Because as I've mentioned, the moment the Second Amendment is removed, it's repealed, every other right is going to follow it in lockstep. So I think you need to be vigilant. I think you need to stand up and fight for the rights that we do have before there is nothing else to fight for. I'm Chris Anthony, and I'm out.